The Canon 90D is a camera that deserves attention, so in this video I'm going to talk about some pros and cons regarding this APS-C camera, and I'm going to compare some of its features with the older Canon 80D. So number one, the Canon 90D has the new Digic 8 processor that is much faster than the older Digic 6 that can be found on the 80D. This is a major selling point for the 90D because it has 32.5 megapixels, making it the highest resolution crop camera at this moment. Your printed photos will look much better now, and you can crop more in post-production. This is a pro comparing it to the older 80D that has only 24 megapixels. Number two, no major differences outside the camera in terms of buttons, except for the back of the camera, where a new joystick was added, very useful for switching between the 45 cross-type focus points, but also very handy when you navigate in the menu. I consider this a big pro, but we shouldn't skip the fact that the play button was moved to the bottom, near the delete function. So, is this a pro or a con? Leave me a comment. For me, it's a 50-50. Number three, the Canon 90D is actually at 701 grams in weight, making it lighter than the 80D with 29 grams. Every gram counts when you attach a bigger lens like the 18 to 135mm kit lens and the microphone. So, of course, the weight is so important. A pro again. Number four, comparing it to the 80D, at the time of the release, the Canon 90D was lacking 24 frames per second, and it was a bad joke and a really big con for the creative people out there who sometimes want a more cinematic look. Everyone was yelling at Canon regarding this downside, and they listened. A new firmware update was released at the end of October 2019, and now we can all enjoy the 24 frames per second in both 1080p and 4K resolutions. A big con just transformed into a big pro. Number five. Speaking about 4K, this camera has no crop when shooting at this resolution. I'm actually recording this video right now in 4K, and I think it's nice, and I think it's sharp. Just drop a like if you agree with this feature on the Canon 90D, because I consider it a big pro due to the fact that the 80D's highest resolution was at 1080p only. And here comes number six. Canon 90D can now shoot at 120 frames per second. This is a pro because you can now slow down the footage up to 5 times in post-production, and you can also make your shaky footage much smoother if your lens doesn't have image stabilization. The 80D was limited to 60 frames per second, so thumbs up for the Canon 90D. The con, however, is that the 90D cannot autofocus while recording in 120 frames per second. So you have two options. Try the manual focus, which is a bit tricky because you don't have focus peaking, or you just focus before starting to record. Number seven, the high-speed continuous shooting offers you 11 frames per second on the 90D, while the older 80D can shoot at 7 frames per second. This is obviously a pro, and it's great for capturing the best moment, especially at a sport event. Number eight, two great features that were added on the 90D, and I consider them both pros: the Bluetooth and the NFC functions, making it easier for you to connect with other compatible devices. Number nine, the Canon 80D has face tracking, so a big box around your face, but the 90D has an additional eye tracking feature and improved object tracking autofocus. This is a huge pro, especially when shooting portraits with a very shallow depth of field at f1.4, for example. Number 10, the ISO range for the 90D on the photo mode was extended to 51,200, while the 80D's maximum ISO can go up to 25,600. Here's a photo at 51,200 ISO on the Canon 90D. Okay, I get it, it's better to have the shot than nothing, but still, plenty of noise there. So do I consider it a con or a pro? Hard to tell, but for me, it's a con. On the video side, I made an ISO test with both 90D and 80D cameras, so you can see the differences for yourself, but in my opinion, the Canon 90D created slightly better results at higher ISO values than the 80D. Now, if you have a 60D, a 70D, or an 80D, the 90D will be a step up no matter what, especially for no crop in 4K and 120 frames per second. I also have an 80D as a backup camera, so I'm thinking, should I do the upgrade? What do you think?